Thank you. Very, very glad to be here. I will have to say I'm a little, would say, verklempt right now. I was listening to Chris Williamson on my iPod this weekend. That tells you how old I am. Great to see so many folks here today, and I'm very happy to be with you. I'm the mayor of a really amazing city. I love my job. I have the best job in the world. Any big city mayor will tell you that being a big city mayor is the coolest because you can make things happen. But when I was elected mayor of Houston 6 years ago, I had worldwide media coverage, and it was on the order of, Houston elected a lesbian as mayor. How the heck did that happen? This is Houston. Isn't that in Texas? What? Actually, my family was like, really? Annise got elected? But it gave me an opportunity to leverage the amazing media coverage to talk about my city. Most mayors of Houston don't merit a front page article on the Times of India. But my election did. And while I am very grateful for the Time magazine naming me one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2010, all I did was win an election. I hadn't actually done anything yet. It was about who I am, not what I could do. Now, with 6 years as mayor behind me, it would mean a whole heck of a lot more to have that kind of an accolade. But it's an important distinction because what we're about today is about who we are, but it's also about what we can do, what we are capable of, what we offer, why it's important to have full inclusion in the workplace, in our cities, in our communities, in our country. Now, I do manage a very diverse workforce, and as mayor of Houston, which is the fourth largest city in the United States, and I want to give you an idea of the scale, I represent more people than the governors of 15 states. And we were officially declared after the last census the most diverse big city in America. And I know it's not what people think of when they think of Houston, but almost 1 in 4 Houstonians is foreign-born. And Houstonians come from all over the world, and they come to Houston to make their fortunes, to see their future realized. And what works in our city is that we all manage to get along with each other. And even in my own city, my wife and I have, we have an African-American son, we have 2 biracial daughters, and then we have an Anglo-Hispanic daughter. So we're starting our own little UN. She won't let me adopt anymore. I had my eye on an Asian child, but okay, it's a joke. Except that she won't let me adopt anymore. It is, so I deal with it in my own family and the changes that have happened in my extended family as they have gotten to know our children and embraced them and dealt with the differences. But I want to talk, as I said, about diversity very briefly. I know many of you here are involved in that area in your companies. And this is preaching to the choir, and you live it every day. But I want us to really understand how having a more diverse, inclusive workforce makes a difference. You know, diversity can include the physical, and it does, race, ethnicity, gender. It can include the cultural, country of origin, geography. Diversity can also include attitudes, thinkers versus doers, introverts versus extroverts, risk-reward calculators and how we respond. But diversity also must include economic diversity, regional diversity, diversity of experience, diversity of thought. And diversity is not in itself what is important, it's what you do with the diversity. Having a lot of different colored faces in the room is diversity. The key is to have a real dialogue and input and exchange within that diversity. Now, diversity can become chaos. Think about a plot of land that's a weedy, overgrown riot of different types of plants competing for attention and space. And then think about that same plot of land with the very same plants transformed into a garden where every individual plant has a place to grow and thrive and space in the sun and the nutrients it needs. That's what we're trying to achieve in diversity. But how do you get there? One of the ways to get there is to have that diverse population of whatever it is come together around a shared mission or goal. And companies all over America do this every day. You have sales targets to hit. You have certain milestones you have to make. That can be a shared mission. But when it is truly a shared purpose, it becomes much more powerful. A shared purpose is where everybody throughout the organization understands that they are valued and included, and also understands where they're going and how they're going to get there. We have a very large cancer center in Houston, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and the corporate mission is to make sure that everyone in that hospital, if asked, will say, "What is your job?" Their first answer should be, "I help cure cancer." Doesn't matter what they do, I help cure cancer. That shared mission. And then, of course, you have to have a shared culture. You have to all somehow get to understand each other. How do you achieve that when everybody's so different? Because you've worked so hard to put all of that diversity in a room. You have to understand that the end goal, again, is not diversity. It's the magic that can happen when the right combination of people with the right different skill sets come together. Ideas can rub against each other and strike sparks. In fact, I think in order to achieve true creativity, you have to have real diversity, almost to the point of that chaotic riot of flowers that's just past being a beautiful garden. And you also have to understand that consensus is not the goal. And consensus is probably not a useful tool to achieve great success. Now, I want to shift from the broader topic of diversity to actually talk about LGBT inclusion. I've been out in the LGBT movement here in Texas and in the United States since the 1970s. And I have seen tremendous changes. But there is one thing that hasn't changed in all of those decades. And that is that the single most powerful thing we can do to achieve inclusion, to create change, to make the world safer and easier for the LGBT community is for each one of us to take steps out to the extent that we can, to be our true, authentic selves in every situation possible. You know, that diversity I talked about, different faces around the table, the real challenge for us, those of us who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, is to use our difference, our place at the table, to continue to make a difference and to speak up, to change the outcome, and even to change the game. When I first started out as an activist, I used to, back 70s and 80s, I used to debate folks on the other side. In fact, in the intro, we were talking about the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, and I'm frustrated that so many years on that we are having to vote on whether there should be full inclusion for our transgender brothers and sisters in any major city in America. But it is what it is, and we will have to defeat them at the ballot box. But I am still debating some of the same people that I did back in the 80s. And when I used to debate this one, I can't repeat the word, I used to call him in my head, but let me just say, when I used to debate him, I would say, he would kind of get all tense, and he would talk about the gay agenda. And I would say, there is no such thing as a gay agenda. You imagine that we all get together and we've come up with some grand scheme to take over the world and redecorate it or something, I don't know. But there is no gay agenda. And for years, leading LGBT organizations through my career in politics, and now this year I'll end 18 years in local government, elective office. But all through that time, I would say there was no such thing as the gay agenda. But a few years ago, I came to the realization that there truly is a gay agenda. And it's not an agenda that was hatched in some back room. It's not an agenda that was brought to us from on high. It is an agenda, a very organic agenda that comes from our hearts. And you already know what the gay agenda is. I'm going to remind you of it, but you already know. The gay agenda, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender agenda, we want to be able to go to school in safety without being bullied. We want to be able to serve our country openly in the military, proudly, openly. We want to work at jobs we love so that we can pay taxes to a country that hasn't quite given us our full place, but we're getting there. We want to protect the relationships and the families that nurture us. And damned if we didn't get a few of those this year, right? But that's the agenda, to take our full, equal place in American society. It's nothing sneaky or subversive. It's a deeply personal agenda for each one of us. We have to choose our way through that. But there is truly unanimity across every LGBT organization that I know, that those are core issues for all of us. And it came from each of us who were willing to stand up and be ourselves and speak the truth. Now, there is still work to be done. And in order to finish the job, to have our full rights as American citizens, we have to continue the process. But I want to make sure that each and every one of you in here understands something. We're not asking for full rights and inclusion. We're not petitioning for full rights and inclusion. We have rights. We are claiming our rights as equal Americans. I want to close with a reminder to everyone in here, and I know those of you in HR, you've heard this story, but it's important. And this is a story about a young man who was a lumberjack, and he got a job felling trees. Big, strapping, hunky guy. I know, Tom of Finland, I heard that out there. A big, strapping, hunky guy, and he got a job felling trees. And on the first day, he went out and he cut down more trees than any other man there. And the next day, he worked even harder, but he didn't cut quite so many trees. Still cut more than anybody else, but he didn't cut quite so many trees. And the next day, he went out, and still, he was ahead of the others, and he just worked himself till he could barely stand to stay ahead. Did better than the others, but he didn't cut as many trees as he did the day before. And by the end of the week, he was working harder and harder and harder, and he'd fallen behind one of the older, more experienced lumbermen, and who came out and he cut the same number of trees every day. And he just kept going along. And the young man kind of swallowed his pride, and he went over to the older man and he asked how the heck he was able to maintain that level of work every day. And he begged him to tell him, and the older man finally kind of smiled slowly, and he says, well, every day I start the day by sharpening my axe. Each one of us has to realize that this is not something where we're going to suddenly stand up and say, we have full inclusion in this society, and we can stop. I know there was a little bit of that. We have equal marriage in America, and we can now, hey, we won. There is a transgender woman in Brazil today who will be beaten to death for who she is. There is a young lesbian in South Africa today who will be raped under the theory that reparative rape works, that a violent sexual encounter will, of course, turn you back straight where you should be. There's a young kid in America today who is contemplating killing himself because he is so bullied in school. This is a great time to celebrate the amazing successes that we have achieved as a community. But it is just one step in a long road. And we have to remember that there are many, many others who need our ability to help lift them, not to success in business, success in life, others who need our helping hand to make sure that they survive to the next day. Each and every one of us must make a commitment to full inclusion, to living our lives with honesty and integrity, and to sharpening our axe every morning to make sure that we never slow down. Thank you very much for the chance to address you. I really appreciate it.